The flash of hundreds of cameras lit up the bright afternoon like lightning as security officers surrounded a quiet single father in front of one of the tallest corporate towers in the city. Employees stopped walking. Reporters rushed forward. Every television screen inside the lobby carried the same shocking headline: a trusted financial analyst had allegedly stolen $200 million from the company that had once called him family. His 8-year-old daughter stood only a few feet away, clutching her little backpack with trembling hands, unable to understand why strangers were pointing cameras at the only parent she had ever known. Everyone believed the story was already over. No one imagined that before the sun went down, one small recording would expose a lie powerful enough to destroy an empire. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that truth always finds its way into the light, please like this video, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Soulful Tales for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. Elias Rowan had never imagined becoming both mother and father before turning 35. After losing his wife, Nora, to a sudden illness 6 years earlier, every dream he had once shared with her changed overnight. His mornings began by preparing breakfast, braiding his daughter Ivy's hair with clumsy but determined hands, and walking her to school before heading to work. Every evening ended with bedtime stories, homework, homemade dinners, and quiet moments where he silently promised the framed photograph of Nora that he would never let their daughter feel abandoned. Money was always tight, but love filled every corner of their modest apartment. His employer, Aurora Crest Holdings, seemed like the answer to years of struggle. The company was led by the brilliant and ambitious CEO Vivian Ashcroft, a woman celebrated across business magazines as the youngest executive to build a billion-dollar corporation. Employees admired her confidence, investors praised her fearless decisions, and the media portrayed her as an unstoppable visionary. Elias respected her from a distance and believed he had finally found a workplace where integrity mattered as much as profit. For nearly 4 years, Elias worked quietly behind the scenes, reviewing financial reports with extraordinary attention to detail. He never sought promotions or recognition. Instead, he earned the trust of co-workers who knew he would stay late to help anyone facing impossible deadlines. His honesty became his greatest reputation. Ironically, it was also the reason he became the perfect target. One bright Monday morning, while sunlight poured through the office windows, Elias discovered a series of unusual transfers hidden inside routine investment accounts. The numbers looked harmless individually, but together they formed a trail worth nearly $200 million. The deeper he investigated, the more obvious it became that someone powerful had carefully disguised the transactions across dozens of international accounts. Instead of remaining silent, Elias submitted a confidential report, believing the company's leadership would appreciate his diligence. That report never reached the board. Within 24 hours, security officers arrived at his desk. His computer was seized. His employee access disappeared. Television stations announced that the missing money had been traced directly to his credentials. Anonymous sources claimed he had spent years planning the fraud. By lunchtime, the internet had already judged him guilty. The cruelest moment did not happen inside the office. It happened outside Ivy's school. Parents whispered while children repeated words they barely understood. Some classmates avoided sitting beside her. One little girl innocently asked whether her father really stole enough money to buy an island. Ivy smiled bravely until she reached home, where she finally broke into tears that Elias could not stop. Watching his daughter suffer because of a lie hurt more than losing his career. Lawyers refused to represent him after seeing the headlines. Friends slowly stopped answering calls. Even neighbors who had once shared meals with him began avoiding eye contact. Every day felt heavier than the last. Yet despite everything collapsing around him, Elias refused to teach his daughter bitterness. Each morning he still packed her lunch, still reminded her to be kind, and still believed that truth was patient even when people were not. Unknown to almost everyone, Elias possessed something no one else considered important. Months earlier, After a software update repeatedly corrupted meeting notes, he had begun recording executive briefings on a small digital recorder strictly to verify financial instructions while completing reports. Most recordings contained nothing remarkable. They were simply routine discussions that he had forgotten existed. While organizing old files in his apartment, one recording caught his attention. At first, the audio sounded ordinary. Papers shuffled. Coffee cups touched the conference table. Then unfamiliar voices discussed moving enormous sums through temporary accounts before assigning responsibility to someone whose reputation would make the accusations believable. The final voice belonged unmistakably to Vivian Ashcroft. Calm, calculated, and completely confident, she explained that once the transfers were complete, the company's loyal analyst would become the public face of the scandal while hidden partners quietly secured the funds overseas. She even remarked that ordinary people always trusted headlines more than evidence. Elias listened in complete silence. His hands shook, not because he feared what he had discovered, but because he finally understood why his life had been destroyed. Still, exposing the truth would not be easy. The board had already scheduled a public investor conference to reassure shareholders after the scandal. National news networks planned to broadcast the event live. Elias knew security would never willingly allow him inside, yet he also realized it represented the only opportunity to reveal the recording before it could somehow disappear forever. On the morning of the conference, the city glowed beneath warm sunshine. Hundreds of investors, journalists, and executives filled the enormous auditorium. Vivian appeared perfectly composed as she prepared to announce sweeping reforms supposedly designed to restore public trust. Just as applause began, Elias walked through the entrance carrying nothing except a small recorder and years of quiet dignity. Security moved quickly toward him, but before anyone reached him, he connected the recorder to the auditorium sound system through an unused media cable left near the stage for television crews. The room instantly filled with the recorded voices. No dramatic speech was necessary. Every sentence echoed through the hall with painful clarity. Investors froze. Reporters lowered their microphones in disbelief. Members of the board stared at one another as the recording revealed every hidden transfer, every planned deception, and every calculated step that had transformed an innocent single father into the perfect scapegoat. The silence afterward felt louder than the recording itself. Within minutes, journalists shifted their cameras away from Elias and toward Vivian. Investigators who had been waiting outside entered the building with emergency warrants. The board suspended her authority immediately. Digital records recovered during the investigation confirmed every detail contained in the recording. Hidden accounts were traced. Secret partnerships unraveled. The $200 million was eventually recovered before disappearing forever. News organizations that had once called Elias a criminal now described him as the courageous whistleblower who refused to surrender to injustice. Apologies arrived from strangers, former colleagues, and even people who had publicly condemned him. Although none of those apologies could erase the pain Ivy had endured, they reminded him that truth sometimes travels slowly, but it still reaches its destination. Months later, Elias accepted a position leading financial ethics for a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting honest employees from corporate corruption. The salary was smaller than before, but every evening he returned home with peace instead of exhaustion. Ivy smiled more often. The whispers at school disappeared. Her classmates once again saw only a cheerful girl whose father never stopped fighting for what was right. One sunny afternoon, they visited the small park where Nora had loved feeding birds years before. Ivy placed fresh flowers beneath a tree in her mother's memory and looked toward her father with quiet pride. She had learned that courage was not about never feeling afraid. It was about choosing honesty even when lies seemed stronger. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that integrity is worth protecting, please support the video by sharing your thoughts, liking it, and subscribing to Ripple of Soulful Tales so more people can discover stories of hope, courage, and second chances. Special request: comment below with "Truth always wins" if you believe honesty will always outshine deception, no matter how powerful the lie may seem. As the golden afternoon sun slowly settled across the city, Elias and Ivy walked home side by side, their shadows stretching together along the peaceful sidewalk. They had lost comfort, reputation, and certainty, but they had never lost the one thing no amount of money could ever buy, the courage to stand by the truth. In the end, the greatest victory was never recovering $200 million. It was proving to one little girl that even when the world believes a lie, a single honest heart can still change everything.